Federico, we're back with another episode of App Stories. We are sponsored today by Privacy, Pingdom, and Pillow, and this is part 2 of our music episode. It's I guess it's not an episode, it's multiple because it's a mini series about music. We talked last time about hardware services and how we listen to music, and this week we're going to talk about apps. How you doing today, Federico?
I'm doing good, and it's fun because initially we thought this was going to be like a 2-part mini series.
Well, it was going to be a 1 episode, and then it became 2.
Well, yes. So initially it was going to be 1 episode, and then we figured, oh no, this is too much. It's got to be a mini series with 2 episodes. And then as I was working on the notes and sort of all the apps that I wanted to cover and all the services that I wanted to cover, I realized, oh no, we're not going to be able to fit this entire discussion in 2 episodes. So right now the plan is to do a mini series of 3 episodes, with this one being the second one where we're going to talk all that we know about music apps. So apps primarily, I guess, on the iPhone and iPad. John has a couple of things for the Mac, obviously, because he's a Mac person. But we are going to save for part 3 of this mini series some fascinating examples of, I call them, alternative or companion streaming services. So be on the lookout for that next week.
Yeah, that should be a lot of fun. You know, before we get to that, though, I thought I would talk a little bit more about read later experiments at the.
What have you done? What have you done?
Well, you know, we've talked about this a lot, so I'll try to keep it brief. But you came up with a solution for, I guess I would call it your pleasure reading. You know, just things that you personally want to read that aren't necessarily related to Mac stories. Is that kind of a fair assessment of the category?
Yes.
So, you know, long form stories that you want to read at some point, and you're using an e-reader for that.
Right.
And I haven't decided to go down that path yet, but it did make me start to think about my big bucket of links that I have in Reader's Read Later service. And, you know, I use tags, so I have it organized to a degree, kind of between pleasure reading of that sort, as well as things for Club Mac Stories and other things related to Mac Stories. And, you know, when I heard what you were doing, I started to wonder, would I be better off taking that more personal pleasure reading out of there? Because I feel like sometimes when I'm in Reader, my mode is skim quickly, check headlines, make sure nothing is going on that I don't know about. And so it is not a place where I sit down and read just for pleasure. And as a result, I find myself, whenever I'm in that app, burning through things as quickly as I possibly can and focusing more on short material because I'm trying to get through a lot quickly. And then everything that is the longer form writing gets pushed to the bottom and I never really see it again. So I thought, why don't I do a couple of things? And the first thing I did initially was I thought, well, I'm going to start using Pocket because I know you're using Pocket with your e-reader. And I thought, well, maybe I will get one of those at some point and I could use Pocket. And then I thought, well, maybe I ought to use a different RSS client too that integrates with Pocket. Now, Reader does integrate with Pocket, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I started using ReadKit again, and ReadKit was on the Mac for a very long time, and it only recently has come to iOS. And the reason I used it years ago on the Mac, and the reason I stopped was because it didn't have an iOS client. Now I went back to it last weekend because they do have the iOS client. And since it was released, it's gotten some really nice touches that I absolutely love. The fact that I can put articles in a reader mode in full screen is really nice. You can't do that with Reader. You can also, it has double tap gestures to kind of toggle between reader mode and non-reader mode. You can do a swipe from the edge to get to the web view. Just really easy, simple gestures that make reading a pleasure in that app. But then I ran into a really hard brick wall, which was, although it supports in a reader on iOS, it does not on the Mac.
Okay.
That's And that's a problem because as I really need to have, that's the service I use. I have a lot of special stuff set up in there. And now I'm told by the developer that it's coming at some point, but he's in the process of kind of dealing with, the initial bugs of a new iOS release and adding some features like these. Some of these gestures are very new, and then we'll turn to the Mac app. So it might be something that I switch to long term, but right now I'm not. Instead, what I did was I set up Pocket in Reader, and now I can dump that pleasure reading in Pocket. Everything else, all the other links, for whatever reason, they're always Mac stories related, but they might be for a bunch of different projects.
Mm-hmm.
They go into that everything bucket where I do go through them periodically throughout the week. But the pleasure reading's in Pocket now, and I can either read it in Reader or I can read it in Pocket. And at some point, I may go the e-reader route like you. But I know the e-reader that you purchased, there are rumors that it's going to be updated very soon. So I thought, now is not the time to buy an end-of-life product, especially an e-reader, which once I buy one, I'm not going to buy one again for another probably 2 or 3 years at least. So I thought I'd wait and see with that. So I'm kind of in between. I spent the week putting links in all sorts of different places. On this path, I also revisited Good Links again, thinking that might be the solution. But I think at the end of the day, Reader is the best place for me right now because I enjoy the design so much, and the fact that it has multiple read later services built into it, which lets me separate things out, even though I'm in the same app.
Mm-hmm. You're doing what I've been doing for the past few months.
The other thing that I thought of, Federico, I thought, there's a reason why you and I are both doing this. And I think it's because we've taken on more than we usually do this time of year. And so we figured that there must be a magic bullet in there somewhere that'll save us from all the work we have to do. And there really isn't. We just have to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little concerned that that's what's really going on here.
Yeah, that's possible. I've also been doing something, but you know what? I'm not ready to talk about it. There's something that I want to talk about soon. It just feels like, and you know what I've been doing. And I would say your family knows what I've been doing. That sounds really creepy,
do.
but it's technically correct. It is technically correct. I've been testing something that I want to talk about soon. I'm just not yet sure where this is going to lead me, but it's something that it's got a lot of potential that we are going to discuss here on App Stories in the very near future. But yes, it's that time of year for all of us, I think, where we're getting ready for WWDC. We know that the summer we're going to be busy. So I don't know about you, but I always feel like this pressure right now to make sure that all my systems are in place. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
This is what I did last year with the PDF research material and my mind map and my text editor. And it's something that I like to do every year because I like to make sure that, when once we are going to be super busy, I need to have a functioning system and a good workflow that is going to sustain me for the next 3-4 months.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you've been dealing with our special projects team again, and it was one of those things where yesterday Jennifer asked me. She said, "How's Finn doing?" And I said, "I don't. I didn't talk to him today, but Federico tells me." Which is a little strange.
I can tell you, your son is doing just fine, John.
That's good.
Don't worry about it.
Which is true. Federico was dealing with him yesterday, but I was not. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Privacy.com. About a month ago, I was looking to buy a retro gaming console online, and I found exactly what I wanted, but it was on a site that I wasn't familiar with, and I hesitated. Was ordering from an unknown seller in another country really worth the risk? But then I remembered privacy. Privacy is a tool that makes it easy to manage your financial life online while keeping your most important information secure. By generating virtual numbers, Privacy masks your bank information, so you never have to worry about giving it out to people you don't know online. When it came to buying that retro gaming console that I mentioned, I first paid a quick visit to Privacy to set up a virtual card tied to my bank account. I restricted the amount that could be charged to the amount I was spending on the console. That way, I wouldn't be out of pocket more than I had anticipated. The process was fast, simple, and gave me the peace of mind to order from an unfamiliar seller. Take back control of your payments. Decide who can charge your card, how much, and how often. and you can close the cards at any time. Plus, you can make sure that you are never accidentally billed twice or upgraded to another service without your consent. And Privacy is partnered with the good folks at 1Password to create, use, and save privacy cards directly within your 1Password dashboard. All virtual cards created in 1Password will have the same security benefits as your other privacy cards, and you can set spending limits, create single-use or merchant-locked cards whenever you want. Head on over to privacy.com/appstories and sign up for an account. New users will automatically get $5 to spend on their first purchase. So do that right away. Go to privacy.com/appstories and sign up now. Our thanks to Privacy for their support of the show. All right, why don't we just dive into this, because we have an awful lot of apps to talk about, and I don't think it'll surprise anybody that when we kind of dive into the music discovery and utilities section of this discussion, that right at the top of the list for both of us is an app called Music Harbor,
Of course.
which we have talked about many times in the past. But to me, this is the premier app for discovering new releases because it can analyze your music library. It works now both with Apple Music and Spotify, and it will let you know the new releases that have come out and the ones that are coming up in the future. And one thing that I discovered recently that I didn't even know about Music Harbor is that you can rescan for artists without creating duplicates or having to go through your entire list all over again, because it keeps
you just discovered this?
I did.
Really?
I did. I know
Okay.
this is terrible of me, right? Well, here's the problem, Federico. I have decades worth of music, and when I first set up Music Harbor, I deselected a bunch of artists because they're just in my library, but I don't really follow them closely anymore, and I didn't want those in there showing me the new releases. And so I was concerned that those that I had deselected would show back up again. And I don't think they did. So I think I'm all set. It only had the new ones. Like I hadn't done it in several months, probably even longer. And I went in and scanned my library again and added a bunch more. And it's even more useful to me now than it was 6 months ago. So that's great.
Very nice. Yeah, I love Music Harbor. And even though I switched from Apple Music to Spotify, you can still keep using Music Harbor because it's now got direct integration with Spotify. So I was able to log in with my Spotify account. It scanned my library and it added all of the artists that I was following on Spotify, and it works just fine. Now you can even choose now. I believe this was added a couple of versions ago. When you open a detail page for a specific song or album, you can long press on the music service button, and you can choose, I want to open this album in Spotify rather than Apple Music and so forth. So it's really well done.
Nice.
This is what I love about Music Harbor is the fact that it's entirely focused on releases, and the fact that it splits the main releases page between new releases, so stuff that has already come out, as well as upcoming releases. And I find that really handy, especially because I can go to the upcoming releases section. I can see the stuff that I know I will be interested in, and you can add each album that is coming out to a specific calendar. And so I have a music releases calendar in my iCloud account, and you can configure that to be your default music calendar in Music Harbor's settings. And once you do that, you can just, with the tap of a button, you can say, save this in my calendar so that I will not miss it when it's out. And it's just a lovely application. It's everywhere, iPhone, iPad, and the Mac, thanks to Catalyst. So this is like, if you're the type of person who wants to listen to new music and wants to be informed about new releases, like you cannot go wrong with Music Harbor at all.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And also from the same developer is Music Smart, right? Music Smart is an app I think that you use more than me. I do like having it available, but you're more of a liner notes person than I am. So you can go in and see the credits for any song or album from this app. And it draws on a bunch of different
sources,
databases, right? So that there's an awful lot of information in there.
There's a lot that you can discover there. And if you're the kind of music nerd that wants to know like the name of the producer and the name of the person who plays the saxophone on a particular Jimmy Eat World song, for example, like down to that sort of detail, right? Not just credits for the producer and the main engineer, but also all the different sound engineers and all of the different performers who were credited on a specific song of an album. So it's really well done. What you should know about Music Smart, though, is that the app works both for Apple Music and Spotify. But for Spotify, you can only search and view information about songs in your library from the main Music Smart app. So you can only search and browse there. Where Music Smart really shines, though, is with the Action extension. That, however, you can only use in Apple Music. You can only use, rather, in the Music app, not necessarily the Apple Music subscription. The extension only works in the share sheet with the Music app. And from there, you can just long press on any song that you're listening to, and you can share that with Music Smart, and it pops up this window right inside Music to show you detailed credits for the selected item. So it's really well done. This is the kind of feature that I hope music streaming services will pay attention to and will start re-implementing in their main services. Spotify has some production credits now. Apple Music has some as well. They have credits for lyrics. They are now going to roll out information for record labels. So they're getting there, but there's still a long way to go to achieve what Music Smart does.
Right. And I think what's nice about Music Smart is that it shows that it can be done. This is not like it's not that it's not being done by Apple Music and Spotify because they can't. It's just that they've chosen not to.
It's different priorities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I understand that, but I'm glad that it's shown that it can be done because it's something that if enough people recognize and value, then maybe those services will pick it up. I should mention too that you can get reviews right inside here too. Metacritic, Pitchfork, and AllMusic stuff is all in there, as well as I think some of the Apple Music editorial things. The little blurbs you see sometimes at the beginning of an album. You'll find those in Music Smart as well.
Do you want to talk about Denim? This is a fun one.
Yeah, Denim's a fun app. It's really just for creating playlist cover art. So if you're in Apple Music, for instance, it gives you a grid of 4 album covers when you create a playlist. And if you get tired of that, and who doesn't at some point kind of get tired of that if you're using the same playlists over and over, you can use Denim to create one it has 60 plus different artwork styles available, plus gradients, and you can add text. And it's just a nice way to create your own look and style to the playlist that you're creating. You go in, you create these in the Denim app itself, then save out to the Photos app. And when you're in Apple Music, all you have to do is hit edit on a playlist, and then that album artwork becomes editable too, and gives you the option to pull something out of your photo library, which is where you go get what you create in Denim. So handy little utility. And if you've ever wanted to kind of customize that aspect of your listening experience, you can.
Yeah, and now in addition to Apple Music, you can also change the playlist cover for Spotify playlists in the Spotify mobile app. This was not possible before, so when I used Denim a few months ago to change the artwork for my Best of 2020 playlist, I had to do so from the Mac, but now I can do it all from the iPhone. So I re-downloaded Denim and I unlocked the Pro in-app purchase, and I am going to switch them all to Denim covers. So this is a really is a really nice idea for Denim is the kind of utility that makes me respect like developer creativity. Like they were able to take like a very particular feature, right? Like, what if you could make your playlist covers not boring anymore?
Right.
And they made a whole utility out of that idea, which is, I appreciate this kind of single purpose utilities done extremely well.
Yeah, absolutely. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Pingdom from SolarWinds. If you have a website, what purpose does it serve? Maybe you're driving sales to your products or collecting sales leads for your business. Or maybe you're providing customer service with a contact form. When these critical transactions fail, you lose out on business. Not to mention, it's a bad experience for your users. But there's a solution. Transaction monitoring from Pingdom. Starting at just $10 a month, Transaction Monitoring runs checks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and will alert you when cart checkouts, forms, or login pages fail before they affect your customers and your business. Pingdom will notify you the moment there's a failure over SMS, email, or via your favorite apps like Slack, OpsGenie, and PagerDuty. Depending on what's being monitored or the severity of the outage, you can customize who's alerted and how they get notified. Don't let users discover a problem with your website. You should be the first to know. And it's super easy to get started. Just go to pingdom.com/signup right now for a 30-day free trial with no credit card required. Then, when you're ready to buy, use the code AppStories at checkout to get a huge 30% off your first invoice. Again, that URL is pingdom.com/signup and the code AppStories to get 30% off your first invoice. Our thanks to Pingdom from Solar Winds for their support of the show. You know, you should probably talk about SongShift, which is our next app, because you did recently shift over to Spotify and you used this app, didn't you?
Yes. So there's a bunch of services. There's a bunch of apps on iPhone that let you export a playlist from Apple Music to Spotify and vice versa. And not just Spotify and Apple Music, but also other services. SongShift is the one that I like the most because I've been using it for the past few years. I know the developer, I know the app, I've been following along with all of the updates, and I personally find it to be the most intuitive and the most reliable and fast also of all the alternatives that I've tried. So really, it's a pretty basic concept, but it's done extremely well. You log in with your Apple Music account, you log in with your Spotify account, and you say start a new shift, and you say pick a source and create a new playlist in a destination. So in my case, I picked my Apple Music playlists as the source, and I said create a new playlist in Spotify matching the same songs in the same order. And it's really nice because it's fast. You see the progress as SongShift moves along your songs from one place, from the old playlist to the new one. And it even tells you, like, there's a full log when the process is over, and it tells you if the application was unable to find certain songs, which this is usually the case for exclusives. So stuff like Spotify sessions or Apple Music sessions that the service cannot find on the other platform. So in that case, you will see the error message. But otherwise, like for regular songs available everywhere, it's a one-to-one match. So I was able to seamlessly move my Apple Music playlists to Spotify, and it's it's not the kind of utility that I plan on using on a daily basis. Although, as I say this, well, I don't want to spoil my plans, but at some point I will likely use this utility on a weekly basis, but that's not the time right now.
Yeah, no, I can see
us
both
I mean.
using this. I can see us both diving in and using this as well. So yeah, it is a really great app. I think it's come a long way over the years. I do remember using it a number of years ago, and it was a little hit or miss in those days. And I know from having created my own app that looked up music information that it's not nearly as simple as it sounds like it might be. It's a difficult matching process. And it's gotten a lot better over the recent years, and it's very, very fast now. So I've shared, playlists with family members who are Spotify members here. I usually still send Federico Apple Music links just because I'm too lazy, and I figure he knows how to use SongShift. But maybe I should be a little more considerate. I don't know. What do you think, Federico?
Yeah, maybe.
All right. Well, look, we've got two more. We got two more in this section. One is Shazam, and Shazam's obviously been around for a long time, and it's owned by Apple now, and it's even built into the system where you can pull down on the control center and tap a Shazam button if you've got it installed there, and it'll figure out what song you're listening to, and it works even with when you have headphones on, which is pretty cool. But I've used this app, I'd say, since it showed up on the App Store years and years and years ago. I go through phases with it. I used to use it a lot more than I do today, although that now that it's built into the system, I'm finding myself more often, maybe watching a TV show in the evening and hearing some music and saying, "Oh, I really like that song. I want to know what that is," and using it that way, which is pretty nice because you can do it very quickly by flicking down from the top of the screen, tapping that button, and then
Right.
I'll get an alert on my watch or something, as soon as it recognizes the song. But you've been using this quite a bit for a long time, haven't you?
Yes. So Shazam, I love the feature in Control Center.
Mm-hmm.
I have a complaint about it though, and which is why I still use the dedicated Shazam application on my iPhone. So I really like the fact that when I recognize a song with Shazam, it goes into a playlist, right? It goes into a
Mm-hmm.
what's it called? My Shazam Tracks
Right.
playlist. What's even nicer is that unlike Apple Music in Spotify, I can change the sorting order of my playlist on the iPhone. So I can see my latest Shazam entries at the very top of the playlist. The thing is, when you Shazam stuff in Control Center, it doesn't do that. It doesn't do the automatic playlist saving. It just
Oh.
tells you the song. And yes, that's fine. Thank you. But I also want it to be saved in a playlist automatically. And instead, music recognition, it's not called Shazam, it's called music recognition in Control Center. It doesn't do that. It just recognizes the
Right.
song. So there's the benefit of it working everywhere, of it working even when you're wearing headphones. However, I really do miss the option to automatically save recognized songs in a playlist, which is why
Yeah.
Shazam is still on my second home screen.
That is surprising to me, really,
It
and it
is.
also is. It's surprising to me that they don't call it Shazam and Control Center too. I mean, I know it's part of Apple now, but they've kept the branding and the separation of the app itself. And I think people generally, especially people who listen to a lot of music, know what Shazam is. I'm surprised it's not part of Control Center, except that since there aren't third-party apps there, people might not know it's owned by Apple and might be wondering why their other third-party apps
I
aren't in there, I
guess.
suppose. But I don't
Maybe.
know, whatever. I mean, I'm not going to try to read Apple's mind today. We'll save that for
No.
another time. We do
Yeah.
that often enough.
We do
All
that.
right,
We do it pretty frequently. There's one last app that I want to mention before we
Yes.
switch to the sort of the playback apps. That's the app is called Spotty Stats. So the name is pretty obvious. This is an app that gives you stats for your Spotify listening history. So think of Spotty Stats as sort of what if Spotify Wrapped was available all year long. So this you provide credentials to the app. You give it access to your Spotify account, and it shows you a breakdown of all kinds of info that you may ever want to know about what you're doing in Spotify. So you can see your top artists for your past month. You can see your recently played tracks. You can see trends for that go even further back in time. You can view stats for the past month or the past 6 months or the lifetime stats for your Spotify account. For example, here's a spoiler for you, John. My most listened songs so far, I guess over the past 6 months, so 2020 and the last 2 months of last 2 months of 2020 and the first 4 months of 2021 is Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo, and the number
Yeah.
2 is Afterglow by Ed Sheeran. And then there's a bunch of Italian songs. Yeah, so it's a nice way to see how things are going, I guess, before you get access to Spotify Wrapped. You can see how many minutes of music you've streamed. You can see your top genres. You can see 50. John, you will be happy to know this. 53% of my tracks are danceable. This is what
That's
this is
good
what
to know.
Spotify. 28% of them are acoustic, and 65% of them are energetic. So I like energetic tracks that I can listen to, that I can dance
Yeah,
to, I guess.
This sounds accurate to me. All of this.
So there you go. This is if you're into stats and knowing more about your Spotify listening activity before you get access to Spotify Wrapped, Spotify Stats, really cool utility, and you can also view global charts. You can even view like details about individual songs, like the BPM and the popularity of it. It's really nice.
Wow, that's pretty deep in terms of the stats. I think we lied. We have one more we can throw up in this section before we get to
Okay.
playback, which is Play Tally, which I've got down further in our list of apps because it does a similar thing. It gives you a listening history and you can pick different time periods so you can see, like I can look in it now and see how much time I've spent listening to music and, the last week and that sort of thing and what songs I've listened to. And then it's got a trending section that gives you trends in terms of, what albums and what artists you listen to the most. There's search. You can do playback right in here. This is telling me that I've got 18,632 songs, Federico, and almost 1,500 of them have been liked. And I've got
Nice.
95,000 plays. 95,000 plays. All right.
95,000? Really?
95,000. Yeah, I listen to a lot of music. Almost 6,000 hours of listening. I don't know how, this must go back pretty far. In any event, it also has kind of these awards that are a little bit like the awards in the fitness app that are, this stuff I don't really care about that much, but it's like, gives you awards for reaching certain play counts or number of songs played or hours played, that kind of thing. But it's nicely done. It looks like it's got kind of that unique modern Swift UI look to it with tiles and
Nice.
and big section headers and that kind of thing. It looks nice. So that one's worth checking out too. It's come a long way since the 1.0 came out. So it's another one that's made a lot of progress since we first saw it on
Nice.
Mac Stories. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Pillow. Getting a good night's sleep is underrated, but with a little help, it can be life-changing. Pillow is an all-in-one sleep tracking solution to help you be more aware of your sleep patterns and discover what might be affecting your sleep quality. It's easy to fall into bad habits, but with Pillow, you can get right back on track. If you have an Apple Watch, tracking your sleep is as simple as wearing your Apple Watch to bed. Pillow will track and analyze it automatically. One of the best features of Pillow is its ability to create detailed heart rate diagrams of every sleep session. You can even compare your sleep quality to your weight, steps, caffeine consumption, and many more health metrics to discover how they might be affecting your sleep. Pillow can optionally record sounds you make during the night too. From sleep talking to sleep apnea and snoring or unexpected noises during the night, users have been surprised by what this tracking shows. Pillow is also very privacy-minded. All of your sleep and audio data is encrypted and stored on your device and in your iCloud storage account using end-to-end encryption. Pillow doesn't have user accounts, so you can use it anonymously, and it doesn't collect or send your personal data anywhere else. Naps are a way to boost your productivity, creativity, and overall well-being. If you're able to take a nap during the day while you're working from home, use Pillow's Power Nap mode. It's pretty great. If you need an alarm, Pillow can wake you up on your iPhone, Apple Watch, or your iPad. If you have watchOS 6 or later installed too, the app uses the extended runtime to minimize battery consumption on the Apple Watch while you sleep. Pillow has a home screen widget too that lets you track your latest sleep analysis and daily sleep goals. Pillow is available on the App Store for the iPhone, Apple Watch, and iPad. Discover all of Pillow's features at pillow.app. Again, that URL to learn more about this terrific sleep tracker is pillow.app. Pillow, sleeping better made simple. Our thanks to Pillow for their support of the show.
All right, tell me about albums, John. Now we're talking playback apps now. I will say up front that most of these are compatible only with Apple Music and the Music app.
That is true.
Spotify doesn't really have like third-party players. That's not a thing.
Yeah, that's not really a thing. And so I'm going to start. First of all, I should say that I use the Music app 95% of the time, probably. I do like the Music app. There are a lot of things I would improve about it, but I just like having that app available since it's on every platform. But Albums is an app that I reviewed this week on Mac Stories, and it's really terrific. I mean, especially if you're the kind of person who likes to listen to complete albums. It's very opinionated in that sense, in that it's first and foremost about listening to albums. When you open the app for the first time, it displays a grid of all of your albums on your device. and in your music library. And you just tap one and it starts from the top with track one and starts playing them. Now you can create cues. You can tell it whether you want to pause between albums. You can change the size of the grid. You can change the kind of view of the grid. This is one of the most customizable apps I think I have ever used on iOS. I mean, it is very deep in the customization. It's not like one of those things where every time you open it, you'll see the same 20 albums because it's alphabetical and you're going to see the ones at the top of the list. It's not like that at all because there's a whole bunch of filters you can apply that are based on things like play counts or when they were released or when they were last played or when you added them to your library or alphabetical or, frontwards and backwards, all that kind of thing that allows you to mix up that grid and change it based on what you want to listen to that particular day. And those filters and those different sorting options can be saved as something called quick actions, which show up at the bottom of the screen near the playback controls. And they're a lot like smart playlists because you can set up a really complex set of filters. And not only are these individual filters where there are a lot of different options and parameters you can set, but you can set up groups of filters to, they can be and filters or filters, groups that way, so that you can truly do a lot of what is only possible on the Mac through the music app in creating smart playlists. Now, personally, I listen to singles a lot. I listen to a lot of playlists. I listen to a lot of singles, and that is, I think, been driven largely by streaming and particularly Apple Music and the way it approaches music, which I think is a lot less album oriented than some other services. And as a result, when I go into albums, I have a lot of partial albums that are in my library and not a lot of complete albums, at least in the last 5 to 10 years. And so it doesn't fit super well with the way I listen to music, but I love these filters. And so I do like to go in every so often and find, especially with older parts of my collection that I don't listen to as much anymore, find kind of those hidden gems, things I haven't enjoyed in a long time. And with these filters and sorting options, it's really easy to do that and find those albums. And on top of that, it just looks so good. I mean, the developer has done such a nice job with allowing you to optionally tint the UI to match the album art, and you see this wonderful grid of albums every time you open the app. It's just a great browsing experience in terms of exploring a large collection.
Nice. Yeah, I especially love the filters that the app sets up for you, like back in high school, based on your when you were born. Like it does all these things, like rediscovering music from a certain time of your life in the past. That I think it's really clever. Something that I really would like more companies to steal as an idea. So similar to albums, John, I believe is also long play, which is sort of based around the same concept, right?
Yeah, it's very similar, except it doesn't have the level of customization. Right. And one thing that Albums has also added, in this 4.0 that came out, is something very similar to Music Harbor with the album releases. So there's a deeper set of things like statistics and these insight playlists that you mentioned, and the releases and last FM scrobbling, things like that you can do in albums that you can't do in long play. But long play does have a bunch of different ways to view your collection. It's not just like an alphabetical list, and it does have a similar grid type of approach to the collection. It just doesn't have quite as many customizations.
So I want to mention obviously Soar. So Soar, we talked about before, winner of a Mac Stories Selects Award, I believe, in 2020. So I covered Soar many times before. All I will say is this is like the power user take on a third-party player for your Apple Music account. So this is the most powerful client that you can get for Apple Music on iPhone. Unfortunately, it doesn't have an iPad version yet, so it's just on the iPhone. And I think what Soar stands out for a few reasons. First of all, there's the customization that you can do on the homepage. You can rearrange sections. You can rearrange things like the For You default section of Apple Music. You can move things around and you can sort of craft your ideal layout in terms of the sections that you want to see toward the top of the page and the others that you want to leave at the bottom. And the second one, obviously, is the excellent widgets that Soar provides in iOS 14. These widgets, unlike other widgets that follow sort of the default system limitations, you can quote unquote interact with them on the home screen to do things like shuffle a playlist or control music playback. There's a playback control widget. And the thing is, you're not really interacting with it. Basically, the Soar developer figured out a workaround to sort of fake the fact that when you're tapping the widget, it doesn't launch the main Soar app. When in fact, it is launching Soar, but it's also sort of crashing back to the home screen. You'll see what I mean when you test them. You'll see
I was going to say a lot of developers are starting to do this with any kind of app that has playback.
Right. Okay, that makes sense because once somebody figures it out, then everybody else is going to follow the same approach. But yeah, these widgets are really, really well done and totally customizable as well. And lastly, there's the Genius Mixes functionality, which is sort of like creating smart playlists for Apple Music. Because Apple Music, obviously, we covered this, unfortunately, many times before, doesn't let you create real smart playlists on iOS and iPadOS. So you can create a Genius Mix in Soar, and the Genius Mix is a playlist based on multiple filtering criteria. So you can say, pick 25 songs that I added to my library in the past 2 years that are from these artists, right? You can do all kinds of and or combinations, and you can save a Genius Mix, and then it becomes a really nice way to shuffle a mix. Obviously, the limitation there is you will only be able to play these Genius Mixes in Soar. They don't show up in Apple Music. But if you use the widget, then it becomes a really nice way to instantly shuffle music dynamically, right, based on these filtering conditions from the home screen with the widget.
Yeah, that's right. Another app we should mention is Doppler, because Doppler is a great alternative for anyone who owns a lot of their own music and has a downloadable collection, because it's one of the few apps I've seen where you can actually upload your own music from the Files app and other places. Plus, it also supports a wide variety of formats, not just the typical MP3 and AAC and other things like that. And it has metadata editing on top of that. So this is really kind of a power user tool. Really nice UI, fantastic app. Definitely take a look at it if you've got a collection that you like to keep, I guess, kind of portable and as downloaded files in some location.
I want to mention Prism. So I covered this on Mac Stories and Club Mac Stories before. This is a music player. You can use it with your local music library on iPhone, but it's also a Plex client. This is where it's interesting. So if you're like me, in addition to using music streaming services, you also have your local personal music library. And if you happen to store that music library in Plex, this is I believe, the best option you have on iOS to play that music from Plex. So this is a Plex music player. You can point it to your Plex library. You log in with your Plex account, and then it provides you with a bunch of really handy filters and gestures and quick actions to quickly browse your library, put together playlists, rate songs, easily build a queue for up next. It's really well done. This is like I was able to connect this application to my Plex account, and then I was able to play my FLAC files that I keep in my personal library via Prism. It's really well done, really polished, very Apple-like in terms of design. Definitely, like it feels more native, I guess, than just using the standard Plex app. It's sort of like, what if a Plex player was made by Apple type of approach. Very native, very standard design, but lots of options to customize the UI with custom icons and custom color accents. So it's really well done.
Yeah. As great as Plex is as a server for content, it's really not the best app. And so I think having something like Prism for music or channels for video is a really nice thing to have if you're doing that.
Yeah.
So
let me mention Neutron. So connected listeners may remember Neutron from a few months ago. So here's what I will say. Neutron is not a good-looking app. It's not forget everything I just said about Prism. This is not a good-looking app. But Neutron is absolutely incredible for audiophiles who want to listen to high-resolution music on iOS by using an Apple device, so an iPhone or iPad, combined with an external DAC, right? So
Right.
Neutron has an incredibly powerful music playback engine. This is the only app I've found on the App Store that actually outputs high-resolution audio, either via USB-C or via Lightning, to an external DAC, with support for effects, DSP effects, that Neutron can apply. Neutron has a lot of features, but just to give you an example, Neutron can do PCM to DSD oversampling. Again, most people don't need to know this. If you know what it means, this is quite impressive for an iPhone app. It supports native DSD playback. It can connect to all kinds of sources. I was able to point it to my external drive, which I shared via macOS built-in sharing tools as a network drive. I pointed Neutron to the network drive, and I was able to stream my high-resolution music with the same format, so without any sort of a conversion or downsampling from Neutron on the iPhone to my external DAC, where, of course, my headphones were plugged in. So if you care about this sort of stuff, and even though it doesn't look great, get Neutron because its audio engine is incredible.
Yeah, that's definitely a good recommendation if you're into that stuff. I don't even know what DSD is.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine.
I'll trust you on that one. All right, I want to mention Miximum too, because Miximum is a way of creating what are kind of like smart playlists. It allows you to create all these rules again in terms of what you want to be played back using filters, but they are static in the sense that they're not automatically updated. If you want to regenerate them, you have to go in and kind of refresh them from time to time. It's, not great, but it's a limitation that's there. And I've played with this app, haven't played with it in a while, but it's worth checking out if that's primarily what you're looking for, is a way to create some sort of thing that's close to, but not exactly like a smart playlist. All right, Federico, the last app that I want to mention too is Marvis. And Marvis takes a really unique approach. We've talked a lot about all kinds of apps today, but what this is like basically is a little bit like an editable For You tab. The For You tab in Apple Music has various playlists and recently released things, and it's got all these different sections, but they're in the order that Apple publishes them. There's no way to really change that. And what Marvis does is it has a lot of those same categories and playlists, but it lets you move them around the screen and only see the ones that are interesting and relevant to you. So it's yet another way to explore a collection, and I like it a lot. I think the UI is really nicely done, and I'm a big fan of anything that gives users more control and over customization. So great approach. All right, Federico, I think that's it for part 2. I mean, we've got a lot more to go, but we're getting there. We're getting there. This is a good time in the year to do this sort of thing because, before long, we'll be talking about WWDC and we'll have a million things to talk to
and wish
about.
Lists and all of that.
Wish list, yes. Lots and lots of things, both wishes and then new things to talk about throughout the summer. So getting ready with some music is good because you and I are going to need a lot of music to listen to this summer while we're working on reviews. I want to thank our 3 sponsors again for this episode. That is Privacy, Pingdom, and Pillow. You can find me and Federico at macstories.net. Federico is at Fetici on Twitter and Instagram. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.